Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. It just flipped silver. One day, will it eventually flip gold? I think either way, one of the things that people really want with their Bitcoin is the ability to do things with it, including earning yield. Today, we're going to talk about a protocol that's building all of the infrastructure for this. It's called Solv Protocol, and we're going to cover lots in this video as well, as we always like to do with our deep dives. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So sit back, relax, make some notes if you want to. This one will be an educational, research-heavy video, but of course, as always, we'll kind of cover the protocol itself, some of the pros and cons, including the bull case and the bear case, and as we like to do recently with the investment thesis at the end. So by the time you finish watching this video, you should be an expert when it comes to everything to do with Solv. So first things first, we actually need to look into Bitcoin a little bit. And we first need to look into what the problem with actually native Bitcoin actually is, you know? Now, when it comes to native Bitcoin, it doesn't really do much, right? You buy it, you just keep it. And this has been the strategy for most Bitcoin maxis since inception. You can't natively use it in DeFi. You can't natively use it in lending markets or derivative markets or kind of option markets. You can't earn yield on it by itself. It's kind of slow to transfer. There's no smart contracts on the Bitcoin network either. There are problems with Bitcoin itself, but you know, at times maybe you could argue this is these are the features of Bitcoin, and I completely agree with that. Now, because of these issues, we did actually see the rise of, you know, a variety of other assets, including wrapped Bitcoin, which have basically brought Bitcoin to the EVM. Centralized exchanges like Coinbase kind of introducing their own version of Bitcoin. We had REN BTC and eBTC and TBTC introducing this kind of Bitcoin derivative that you could use in DeFi. Unfortunately, most of these don't have any yield component baked into them. And secondly, many of them are adding extra layers of fragmentation, especially with each of the different strategies that you can use with these assets. And so, yeah, this is like a big problem that we have with Bitcoin and Bitcoin alternative assets, I should say, that we have today. So my question that I'm posing to all of you listening right now is, can Bitcoin become a yield generating asset? You know, and just like real estate, where let's say you buy a property, an apartment, a hotel, whatever, you can kind of rent it out, you can earn yield on it. Why can't we use Bitcoin for some sort of yield opportunity in some way, shape or form? And I think you can. And that's what we're going to eventually talk about today. So look, it's actually much more than a 1.4 trillion market cap today. I think Bitcoin's actually gone up since I actually started making these slides. And so, yeah, we're talking about an asset that's 1.6, 1.7 trillion now. Can Bitcoin earn yield? I think it can. And we're going to talk about some of those different ways through Solv today. Now, one other component just before we get into Solv is the rise of kind of restaking. Eigenlayer pioneered this concept, taking assets and kind of using them for restaking purposes and using them for economic security to help secure other kind of layers, other kind of services, those who want to opt in. We call those AVSs, and you would have seen many of them on Eigenlayer already. Now, Eigenlayer is really focused around the asset ETH. It's grown to a 10 billion plus TVL product, and users can kind of restake their ETH in a variety of different formats, restake their LSTs, and use this to secure other layers, whether it's a bridge or an oracle or something else. Now, we also saw the rise of Babylon, who basically took this concept and brought it to Bitcoin. And so users can take a variety of Bitcoin assets and restake them with Babylon. And the AVSs here are the ones who pay rent for this economic security, hence giving Bitcoin restakers yield. And so, yeah, what can Bitcoin actually secure? As I mentioned, oracles, but also things like derivatives, dexes, bridges, definitely a big one. Other chains as well, real-world assets, there's a ton of different things. And all the protocols who will rent this security from Bitcoin itself can actually use it, and therefore those Bitcoin restakers can earn real yield, I should say. This is just an important concept to understand to really appreciate the rise of Solv as well when we go into it, which we will do now. So Solv Protocol, essentially giving Bitcoin yield generating opportunities, is actually one of the fastest growing Bitcoin protocols. And you can actually see like Solv is actually up there with, you know, some of the big giants that we see with BlackRock, Grayscale, Fidelity. Of course, these have, you know, probably a little bit more Bitcoin at the moment, but Solv is definitely doing pretty well there. And it's actually got much more than 20,000 Bitcoin within the Solv Protocol today. So it's all backed by real Bitcoin. And all of this Bitcoin is held in in custody through some custodians. And then what you can do is you receive an asset called SolvBTC, and SolvBTC can be used in a variety of different strategies. It's currently on 12 different chains and expanding, and we're going to go into all of the different things related to it as well. So what is happening to the Bitcoin that's backing SolvBTC? Well, you've got some custodians here, the likes of Copper, Sifu, etc. Some of you will know some of these names. They're very, very big names in the industry, and they are there to kind of ensure that the underlying Bitcoin is kept safe. So let's go into a little bit more detail regarding Solv. So SolvBTC is this LST, you could, or this kind of Bitcoin alternative asset that's backed directly one-to-one with Bitcoin. And, you might be thinking, okay, this is just kind of like all of the other Bitcoin alternatives then, isn't it, right? Well, no, it's not. And the reason is because through the Solv Protocol itself, there are an ever-expanding variety of different strategies that suits everyone's needs, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Now, right now, there are 4 live strategies. There's one that's on Babylon to do with restaking. There's one on Athena to do with basis trade yield generation. There's one that's on Core, which is proof of stake validation. And then there's a Jupiter yield generating strategy as well. And in due time, there will be many, many, many other strategies as well. Now, what you can do is you can take this SolvBTC and you can put it into whichever strategy that you want. If you're someone who wants to earn from restaking, you could do so. If you want to earn from the yield that comes from basis trading, you can do so. There are going to be an ever-expanding number of these different strategies, and they can cater to all of you. And this is the main thing here. We're not fragmenting things because it's all under the same SolvBTC layer. And this is like a really, really important aspect because let's say, with other Bitcoin alternatives, there'll be one for restaking. There'll be a completely different one with different liquidity on a different chain for kind of yield generation through DeFi strategies. Here, we've got one unified layer, and we have these strategies on top. And so what you can do is you can take your SolvBTC, put it into whichever one of these strategies you want, and you get a token which is like a SolvBTC Babylon, or a SolvBTC Athena, a SolvBTC Core, a SolvBTC Jupiter, and you can decide whichever one you want. Maybe you want a few of them. So I thought what would be interesting is to go through each of these different strategies right now, just so that you understand what they are, how they work, how you can potentially benefit from them too. So let's start off with the first one. It's SolvBTC Babylon. This essentially takes the SolvBTC into SolvBTC Babylon, and the underlying SolvBTC is restaked on Babylon. Now, as we just mentioned in the previous slide, restaking is really interesting because of the yield that can be earned through AVSs. Right now, they have some extra rewards as well, including the Babylon staking yield, Babylon points, Solv XP, which is part of the reward scheme from Solv, and access to other DeFi yields as well by taking this liquid staking token and using it in a variety of other strategies right now. Now, one thing to note is redemptions aren't possible just yet, so you will need to use the LP pools in order to exit. However, I'm expecting this to come in due time. We saw a similar kind of thing with a lot of the LRT protocols on Ethereum, so I don't think this is anything that's too surprising at the moment. And yeah, in due time, once Babylon have all of their different AVSs live, a lot of them will be paying yield. I expect some of that to kind of end up going to these restakers. So SolvBTC Babylon will have an additional source, which should be the real AVS yield coming at the bottom there. So yeah, there's a picture here that I've just added of a few different strategies that you can deposit your SolvBTC Babylon in, whether it's Pendle or whether it's some of these other DeFi protocols. You'll see that there is points available and some APRs as well, but also you can see kind of how much TVL there is across all of these different protocols too. But yeah, if you're interested in restaking, this one might be an interesting one for you. You don't have to put it in a DeFi protocol. You can just kind of hold it, and I think the vast majority of people are doing that as well. But yeah, I think that covers everything to do with the first strategy. Right, moving on to the second strategy, we're going to talk about Athena. This is actually a really, really interesting strategy. Whoever works at Solv who came up with this strategy, hats off to you, because I really like this one. So this is an Athena-based strategy. Now, some of you may be familiar with Athena, some of you may not. If you're not familiar with Athena, I have done a deep dive covering everything that you need to know about Athena. I will try to remember and leave a link to it in the description below. But if you don't know what Athena is, I'll kind of quickly summarize it. Athena is a stable coin that earns yield from basis trading, essentially farming funding rates. Now, funding rates right now are really, really high, and that's because lots of people want leverage on ETH. And so by creating a delta neutral position, which is what Athena have done. They've created this synthetic stable which earns yield from the basis trade, or basis yield, I should say. Now, what's happening here is that the underlying Solv BTC is used as collateral, and stablecoins are borrowed against this. And we take those stablecoins, convert them into USDE, which is Athena stablecoin, stake it, and then you can earn yield that comes from the ETH staking yield plus funding rates. And the yield is then passed over to Solv BTC ENA holders. So you can earn yield from USDE, or SUSDE, I should say. You can earn Athena Sats, which is our points program, and Solv XP as well at the moment. Right now, you can see from this image just kind of what the yields are looking like on Athena at times. Right now, as of recording, the yields have gone crazy. So we're looking at like 20, 30, 35% right now. That's purely just because funding rates have gone pretty absurd. But I think historically, we're looking at like 10, 15, 20%, which is what I've seen with Athena so far. So yeah, pretty good. And this is real yield that you can earn from your Bitcoin. So yeah, this is the second strategy. Really like this one, and that's the Athena one. Right, third strategy is basically using your Solv BTC to help secure proof of stake chains. So one of them that we have right now is Core. Core is one of these layer 2 side chains, I guess, for Bitcoin, I should say. And right now you can use your Solv BTC to use it in proof of stake. And so ultimately what you're able to then earn are the block rewards, which will be Core tokens. The long-term yield is around 4%. I think that's in line with a lot of proof-of-stake chains, actually. But of course, you can earn it without taking on additional risk, really, because you're just kind of validating block rewards, I guess. And of course, you can earn Solv XP. Whereas, in the above strategies, you're taking on borrowing risk as well. So, it's a different risk profile altogether. And again, this is one of the points that I really want to make, is that with Solv, there are different strategies for everyone. If you want to take on a little bit more risk, potentially earn some higher yields, you can. If you want to kind of keep it comfy, but still earn yields, of course, you can do so as well. So this is Core, and I imagine in due time, with the massive rise of how many Bitcoin chains we're going to see, lots of them being proof of stake as well, I imagine demand for a variety of other protocols or chains, I should say, to use an asset like Solv BTC in the consensus layer for those chains. So that would be really interesting to see. But right now, the Core one is actually alive. And last but not least, we have one of my favorites as well, which is the Solv BTC Jupiter strategy. And this one is really out there. Like, I'm telling you, this one really caught me by surprise. So Solv have basically partnered up with Jupiter. If you don't know, Jupiter is like one of the main dexes, or dex aggregators, I should say, on Solana. They've built out a variety of other products, including a perps market. They've built out a perps AMM, and it's like constantly in the top 3 or top 5, I should say, when it comes to like daily volume. Now, the counterparty to the traders on Jupiter are JLP. JLP basically being this index fund of Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and stablecoins, and essentially it earns the trading fees from the protocol. Now, because Jupiter has insane amounts of trading volume, therefore able to generate lots of fees, JLP is actually a monster of an asset. And in fact, you can go and have a look at like the price chart of JLP over time. Pretty much up only. That's purely just because Jupiter's done an amazing job at distribution. Lots of people like to trade there as well. So Solv BTC Jupe is this new LST that's just come out fairly recently from the Solv Protocol, and it's a product based on JLP. But what they've done is they've hedged out the exposure for all of the other assets. So as I mentioned, the index contains BTC, ETH, Sol, and stablecoins. If you hedge out the other 3, you're left with just kind of net Bitcoin yield exposure. And so because of that, you can earn, so this is the index, this is what it looks like. Because of that, you can earn real yield that comes from the trading fees from JLP directly and pass that over to Solv BTC LST holders in the form of Solv BTC Jupe. This is really cool in my opinion. So yeah, you can earn yield from JLP. You can actually also earn from shorting the other assets in the index, so to kind of hedge out your exposure. As you can imagine, the funding rates for some of these assets like ETH and Bitcoin at times can be really high, and so you're able to really do pretty well with that. If you're kind of shorting, ETH and Sol, not BTC, you're able to earn pretty nicely on that. So yeah, hedging out the exposure of the other assets. You obviously don't earn the same APY as JLP because you kind of have a different exposure altogether, but it's still double digits, and it's double digit real yield, and on top of that you earn points. So I think this is a really interesting one. JLP is massive. We're talking about almost 1 billion in TVL, which is pretty insane. So there's definitely scope to increase the market size here significantly, especially as the demand on Jupiter is really, really high too. So yeah, this is one of the coolest strategies I've seen in a long time. I don't know exactly how they're getting just net exposure to Bitcoin. So I don't know which centralized exchanges or which on-chain perps markets they're using to hedge out the exposure. This is something that I'll probably have to dive deep in and kind of figure out a little bit more. It was a little bit hard to kind of find this information publicly just yet, but I think either way, the strategy is really, really interesting and something that definitely attracts me for sure, especially because it's a way to earn double-digit yields and points for potential airdrop without having impermanent loss, without having some of those other kind of risks, and the other asset exposure risk is hedged out for you automatically. So I love that. I love that a lot. So those are the 4 kind of main strategies that I think at the moment we'll talk about. What I do know is that there are going to be other strategies as well. I know GMX is in the pipeline too, and potentially some really interesting things coming in terms of the Berachain ecosystem. But for now, like, these are just some of the main 4 protocols, or 4 products, I should say, with their own LSTs. So Solv BTC Babylon, Solv BTC Athena, Solv BTC Core, and Solv BTC Jupiter. So having a look at the protocol itself in terms of some metrics and stats, there's actually 25,000 plus Bitcoin deposited into Solv. That results in a TVL of around $2.3, $2.4 billion at the moment. 500k wallets, as I mentioned, it's on pretty much all the main chains at the moment. Not on non-EVM chains yet, but hopefully that comes in sometime in the future. And you can see kind of just comparing the amount of Bitcoin to other chains. Solv by itself is doing pretty good. Actually, these are all chains: Ethereum, Tron, BNB, Merlin, Arbitrum, and Solv has more BTC than some of these chains kind of even added together as well, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, let's see kind of how it grows. Right now, Solv is definitely one of the, if not the biggest Bitcoin protocol there is, partially because of how good these strategies are. I think you can see clearly, look, in the Babylon strategy, there's almost 1 billion. In the core Jupiter Athena, there's 50 to 100 million as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty damn good. Now, how does Solv make money from this? It makes revenue from redemptions of Solv BTC into BTC, but this is free right now. I believe it's going to be somewhere around 0.5, 0.6%, but I've put an asterisk because this isn't confirmed and I don't know exactly, but this is kind of what I estimate it to be around. It also earns fees from all of those different strategies that we talked about. So it does have a performance fee. For something like the Athena strategy, there is a 20% performance fee. So you can kind of figure out exactly how much revenue they're making based on the TVL. But we are going to do some guesstimations at the end when we go into the investment thesis. So stay tuned till the end of the video for that. So yeah, having a look at the TVL, I mean, this is the TVL just within the different strategies itself. I mean, what you can see here is like kind of how Solv compares to other Bitcoin protocols. You may think that, hold on a second, I thought that Solv has higher TVL than kind of what's written here. It does. That's because not all of the Solv BTC is in the LST strategies. They're all over the place, really. But ultimately, if you add them all up together, we are talking about $2.3, $2.4 billion as of right now, and kind of what the price of Bitcoin is today, which is pretty impressive, actually. Now, here's the juicy part. Solv BTC in DeFi. And this is kind of what I like. I like to farm. I like to use my assets in different strategies. I like to make my Bitcoin my employee, so it's working for me all the time. There are a few different protocols that really have eaten up a lot of kind of Bitcoin DeFi. Of course, Solv is one of them, but the likes of Lombard and some of these others have done so too. Solv BTC can be used in a variety of different protocols. So Pendle, definitely the largest at the moment. You can actually see here that Solv BTC has a pretty big mark in the Pendle ecosystem, actually. Avalon as well, another protocol, 350 million plus. There are a few other kind of protocols here: Colend, Pencil Protocol, Pel, Miso, all of these 100 million plus. To be honest with you, I'm not the most familiar with some of these protocols, especially because they're on chains that I'm not the most familiar with the likes of Core and Scroll. I mean, I've definitely played around with these chains, but not so much with these protocols. Definitely something like Pendle I have, and the OGs like Curve, Uniswap, Morpho, Pancake, Trader Joe, etc. These are protocols that I'm very, very, very familiar with, and it's great to see there. Great, really, really good to see. And one thing that's really helped kind of this multi-chain ecosystem with Solv is the integration with CCIP from Chainlink. This essentially is a way for the Solv assets to move from one chain to another, in a very, very secure manner. It's not, I wouldn't even call it bridging. It's like a cross-chain communication layer. You could call it somewhat akin to Layer 0, although they are competitors, Chainlink and Layer 0. But yeah, this is all powered because of CCIP. One of the things that I'm personally most excited about is Berachain. And one thing that really got me excited with Solv is seeing how it's integrated across everywhere and everything within Berachain. So a lot of really, really interesting protocols here, the likes of Infrared, Origami, Dolomites, Kodiak, Gummy, Exponents, Goldilocks, Baraboro. I'm sure many of you who listen to me and follow me know that I'm a big fan of all of these here. And the fact that Solv is integrated into every single one of these is very, very bullish. So I'm very excited for that. Definitely going to try and get Solv integrated everywhere on Berachain, because Berachain, through proof of liquidity, introduces another yield source for Solv BTC holders, and that is from BGT. Users will be able to get receipt tokens. They can stake those receipt tokens on Bera governance, on BGT station, and therefore, earn BGT rewards as well. And so, yeah, I'm very excited for all the kind of strategies, whether it's like looping strategies on Origami, lending on Dolomite or Gummy, getting leverage on Exponents, borrowing Nect on Baraboro, using it in infrared vault strategies, or even just kind of some of the ALM strategies on Kodiak. There's going to be bribes and BGT going around left, right, and center when it comes to Solv assets. So yeah, very, very excited for that. Potentially even some yield trading strategies on Goldilocks. I think either way, there's going to be lots happening within the Berachain ecosystem. And I think this is going to be one of the key differentiators with Solv compared to other Bitcoin protocols, just kind of how entrenched it is within some of these ecosystems, particularly Berachain. So very, very excited for that one for sure. Is it going to be a Solv token? Maybe, I don't know. But I think there will be, and one of the reasons is because there is a points program. Now, we all know that points mean prizes. I don't know what the airdrop is going to be like. I don't know when it's going to be. I'd like to think that it's going to be somewhat soon. Like, I don't think it would be in their interest to drag this on for 6 to 12 months. I'd like to think that it's probably going to be somewhat in the next 3 months, maybe. I think it's pretty good opportunity for them to kind of take advantage of the market right now. But of course, this is something that they'll know. If you guys have any insights, please tell me, because I'd love to know. But like, you get points for kind of using your Solv assets in all these different kinds of strategies, including just holding on to the LSTs as well. So it's up to you to decide how you want to use them. You can use them for yield, or you can use them in the LST strategies that we talked about. You decide, get your points, and maybe we get rewarded nicely. We'll have to wait and see on that one for sure. Solv did actually raise as well, and I believe it was at around 200 million FTV. Now, don't quote me on this because I have not confirmed this, but this is what I saw when I did some Googling, right? And I think some articles and newsletters have actually quoted this, so I've got it from there. $25 million raise, pretty decent, stacked cap table. I mean, you've got Blockchain Capital, Binance Labs, Spartan, you've got, previous participants as well, Jump, Mirana, OKX Ventures, like pretty stacked cap table, and probably some of the best angels as well. You got some guys from the Berachain team, some guys from Movement, some guys from Athena, some guys from Eigenlayer, Curve as well, GMX. You got DCF God, like big angels. I wish I was in there, but what do I know? No financial advice. Anyway, in regards to the team, I think Jing, Ryan, Catherine, just a few names. Go and follow them. They got some pretty good content. One thing that I was doing, especially during my research process, was like watching a lot of these long form podcasts. This one from DeFi Dave was really good, so I did like this one. This has got Jing in it talking about, a risk-free Bitcoin yields and all kinds of interesting things. So definitely go and check them out. But yeah, the whole team, from what I've seen, have been very vocal, very active, and I really like that as well. Really trying to get Solv BTC assets everywhere, and I think they're doing a great job with it so far. So last few things before we kind of wrap up. I love to always talk about the bull case and the bear case. So let's first of all go through the bull case. Look, this is the largest growing Bitcoin LST that exists right now. It's highly liquid as well. And I think it's great because there's strategies for everyone. If you want to earn from proof of stake, if you want to earn from restaking, if you want to earn from derivative yields, if you want to earn from basis trading yields, if you want to farm it, in a DEX, you can do so. There's so many ways to do so. And all of them right now are offering points, and we know that points mean prizes. I love that it's integrated in chains like Berachain. Berachain is like the DeFi chain. So I'm sure Bitcoin is going to be massive there. And of course, Bitcoin right now, $1.8 trillion asset. That is $1,800 billion. Right now, the biggest Bitcoin protocols are at like 2-3 billion in TVL. If we even capture 10%, we're talking about 180 billion there. There is so much more upside. And I think this is just really goes to show you like the opportunity here. I think revenue should be strong, especially because like some of the protocols like Athena and Jupiter, they print. And so with Solv being able to capture some of this, Bitcoin LST holders are going to enjoy. And I think when it comes to redemptions as well, there should be some significant volume. The most interesting thing to me is that there's going to be even more strategies. There's so many more strategies cooking. I think I've said this like 10 times now, but the Berachain ones are going to be what I'm so looking forward to. Bear case, look, competition is very, very intense when it comes to Bitcoin protocols and Bitcoin tokens. There are people who are going to want to hold these other tokens as well, so there will be some fragmentation there. Lombard, Pump, UniBTC, Lorenzo, P-Stake, DLC, Bitcoin as well. Like, these are all a variety of different strategies, and to be fair, these other protocols have their own pros and cons as well. There probably are opportunities with some of these other Bitcoin LSTs as well, so I don't want to put them down, but what I am just trying to say is like, it's not like a sector that Solv has won already. I think there is a big pie for all of these protocols to kind of enjoy. But right now, Solv is definitely at the top, in my opinion. Perhaps it might be a little bit tricky for some of the people coming to Solv to understand the different strategies. It definitely takes a bit of time to get your head around what's going on at Solv. But I think, if you spend a bit of time, you can get your head around it. It clearly isn't stopping people from depositing, but I do think like some more education, some more content, some more kind of exposure to the people coming to Solv for the first time would be nice, especially for those who aren't familiar with doing stuff on chain. For those who aren't familiar with DeFi, for someone like you and me who are probably watching this video, it might be a little bit easier. But for those who are kind of looking at earning yield on their Bitcoin for the first time, they've never done anything like this. They've only ever bought Bitcoin on a centralized exchange or through an ETF. Like, for them to start going through complex Bitcoin LST strategies through Solv, like, there is a bit of a jump there. So I think probably some work to do to kind of make it a little bit easier, but we'll see. I guess there is a little bit of fragmentation as each LST has its own token, but I guess with Chainlink, you can have one-to-one conversions, and it should be very, very easy to go from one strategy to another. So not really at the same time, but I thought it is still something to kind of keep a hold of, especially because not all of the strategies you can unstake right now. I'm sure in future that you will be able to, but because of that, you kind of have to go through liquidity pools if you want to exit. And liquidity pools have pretty good depth right now. There's pretty good liquidity, but it is just something to be aware of. One question that I am always thinking about is like, do Bitcoin holders, especially whales, do they really want to use DeFi? Are we somewhat capped with kind of how big this can be just because someone like Michael Saylor is not really going to be the type of person to use these protocols? Just something that I've been thinking about. I don't think so, but I think like there has been this ongoing debate for a long time about whether Bitcoin holders even want to use DeFi. I think they will, but there are many people who will disagree with me there. You are also trusting the custodian, so it's not truly decentralized, but we've seen that time and time again. Just something to be aware of. I think when it comes to token value as well, there is no Solv token right now, by the way. So if you're wondering, there isn't one. But one thing that I am questioning is how will the inevitable Solv token be valuable? There are lots of unknowns there. Is there going to be revenue share? If there is revenue share, where is that coming from? Is it coming at the expense of SolvBTC Strategies or the protocol? So yeah, that's something that I'm thinking about. And like the other thing is like, is the upside in the private markets? They did that round, that big round. But when it comes to the token launch, is it going to launch at a high valuation where retail users like you and me can't capture it? We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, just a question there. Last but not least, something that I always love to do is talk about the investment thesis. And I thought it would be really interesting to look at the different LST protocols today on other chains as well. We have the likes of Lido, Rocket Pool, Jito. There are many others as well across all different chains, but these are just three that I kind of picked. And one thing that I wanted to just really highlight here is look at the TVL on all of these different protocols. Lido with 20 billion, Rocket Pool with 4 billion, Jito with 3 billion. The market cap and FTVs are completely different with all three. So the point I'm trying to make is if you're looking at like an investment here, TVL itself isn't a good enough metric to justify. Jito has the smallest TVL, but it's got the highest FTV. Rocket Pool in the middle has pretty good TVL, but a tiny FTV and market cap, in comparison to the others. It doesn't make sense. So TVL by itself is not a good metric to use. You can use it in combination, but I think just something to just be aware of. I think lots of people will go and kind of have a look and see what is the highest TVL Bitcoin product and automatically think that it is the best. Not always. I think it's just something that I want to pay attention to. To me, what's more important is revenue. And I've done some moon maths here to really try and figure out how much does Solv actually make and kind of where we can justify a valuation from this. So I've got a few hypotheticals here, so please bear with me. If you're watching this in future and the token's launched and it's a completely different kind of metric, especially with some of the data that we're using, I apologize. Maybe drop a comment and I'll do an update on it, right? But look, there's a few things that we want to look at. Firstly, I'm anticipating something like a 20% performance fee for all of the different strategies. And from redemptions, I'm just going to make it easy and call it 0.5% fee. So at the moment, the Jupiter LST makes around 15% APY. The Core LST makes around 3%. The Athena LST makes around 7%. And the Babylon LST, which has 900 million allocated, actually earns 0 right now, but once AVS yield is turned on through Babylon, I believe it could be around 5% a year. And so what I've done is I've basically calculated, okay, if the TVL remains the same and the APY remains the same, in a year, how much are we possibly looking to make? So here are the numbers, right? From Jupiter, around 2 million, from Core, around just under half a million, Athena, just over half a million, Babylon around 9 million. Add that up, you get about $12 million annualized. Now we have to remember that Solv also makes revenue from the redemptions. So yeah, let's say a 0.5% fee. Right now there's about 2.3 billion in the protocol. And so if all of that were to kind of redeem itself, we're talking about around $11 million in revenue. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. What I'm going to think is that let's say in a year we see like 20-25% leave / re-enter over the period of a year. We're talking about like a $3 million revenue per year just from that. So when you add all of that together, can Solv earn $15 million a year? And if it does, what is a fair valuation? Well, in crypto, some people like to use PE ratios or P to S ratios. I think typically you see something like a 50x multiplier. And so based on that, I think it's actually possible to see sometimes even a little bit more than a 50x. I think it's possible to see 1 billion FTV on the cards, possibly even 2. That's if things grow from here. So yeah, I think call it 750 to 1 billion. like a somewhat fair valuation based on kind of some of these numbers, and there are lots of assumptions here, so please don't quote me on it. No financial advice either, but I think if things were to continue to grow from this point onwards with more strategies, or the TVL grows even higher, or if Bitcoin goes up even more, then I think the FTV here will re-rate as well. I think that there is definitely a link between the price of Bitcoin and where the Solv token will go. Because if Bitcoin goes absolutely crazy over the next year and goes to like 150k or 200k, then I think certainly there will be some sort of re-rating here as well, especially because the TVL within the protocol will go up massively. There are lots of questions that remain to be answered. You know, when will TG even happen? How are the tokenomics going to look? Ultimately, that's like the most important thing in terms of like what this token can be potentially worth. Will there be rev share? You know, what's the valuation of some of the competition going to be? What happens post Babylon? So many questions that remain to be answered. But yeah, hopefully we'll do some updates soon and kind of get back to you on that one. But either way, I think Solv has massive potential. You know, the numbers speak for themselves, really, and I'm very, very excited to see kind of where this goes. Definitely will be enjoying farming with SolvBTC. I'm sure you've seen some of my content covering this as well, but of course, let me know what your thoughts are. No financial advice here. I just wanted to do a deep dive to give you some education on what Solv is, how it works, some of the pros, some of the cons, and where I think its valuation could lie. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back with plenty more educational content in the not so distant future.